Cool, cool. So yeah, no, we got some good news going on up here. We actually got the state fair going on now, and I got to tell you, probably about 98% of the people are walking around without masks and enjoying themselves and hanging out by each other and not afraid of each other. But the people who are the Democrat booth, and anything that's state, like the DNR, shut their doors and said you can't come in our building this year.
Hold on. I just to limit your enthusiasm for a second, because this is awesome. This is a huge. But I would guess food service employees also are masked.
Yes, because they're required to by the state fair.
Government agents and Democrats, but the state fair didn't try to order all the attendees to mask.
Or the cops, and I'm telling you, there are cops everywhere. And that was the fun part about doing this drop-off station. Is every time someone would come up to me, right, we'll play a quick clip, but they go, "What the heck is this?" And I go, "Hey, man, just in case you're nervous, there are cops everywhere out here, and if you're paranoid, you can drop it off, and we'll take care of it. We've got certified disposers, and we'll properly dispose of all of this stuff for you. Don't worry about it." And actually, I got to get out to my van in about 15 minutes for a little disposal session.
Did anybody drop anything off?
I haven't seen any this year, but we did it about 5 years ago, and people actually did drop stuff off.
Probably I think there are two cases where that's possible, right? Either like, "Oh shit, I forgot I had this joint in my pocket. You know what? I'd rather not worry about it for the day. I got another one in the car. That's funny. I'll give it to these guys." Or it's just, "You know what? That's funny. I'm going to break off a chunk of my stash just to throw in to say good for you," right?
That's it. I can't tell you how many people stop and look at it. One guy looked at it and go, "That's brilliant." It brought so many people into our booth because it catches your eye. And I got a couple of little jars, if you want to put the picture up again, that I took some bark out of the yard and I painted up green, okay, and put little orange stripes on the green and put them in the jar, so it kind of looks like weed from afar. Yeah, you can see the jars down there. And so everyone wants to come up and get a close look. And the first thing I say to them every time is, hey, that's for leaving, not taking. And then the conversation goes from there.
Nice. So 98% of the general public at the state fair is Minnesota, right?
Oh, communist Minnesota.
Yeah. So pretty heavy northern Midwest Democrat-run statist environment, right?
Backwards Democrat-run statist environment, absolutely. People around here get up every day thinking they're better than everybody else, and Florida's kind of half backwards in places, and they got it figured out all over us. It's crazy how it goes. And not to offend people from Minnesota, but I like to describe Minnesotans as they like to get up every day, ratchet their ass one notch tighter, and off they go. Time to judge other people, time to tell other people what to do.
All right, so for Minnesota compared to the rest of the country, two questions. How has the hysteria been? How has the government reaction been?
The hysteria has been overwhelming, and the government reaction has been double overwhelming. They call them, there's a booth at the state fair, Action for Liberty, I think, who had a King Walz sign up, because Walz is our governor. And the state fair made him take that sign down, then was forced to allow him to put it back up because of public outcry. So it gives you an idea.
Okay, so how do you explain 98% of the attendees unmasked then?
Just like everything else, the government doesn't represent the people anymore. The government represents itself and its own special interest. And what's good for the people isn't good for the government.
So are the people then over the hysteria at this point?
It's about everybody I talked to. There's a bunch of different. Actually, the legislature here had to vote to remove the emergency powers from Walz. And it took them vote after vote after vote to finally get there. I couldn't believe it, because Minnesota, the way I describe the Minnesota political spectrum is a Minnesota Republican is the same on the political spectrum as a Texas Democrat. Okay. It's just not as bad left. And the Republicans in this state, like the national Republicans, seem to have absolutely no nuts. They won't stand up for the people. They're part of the statist game, and they want to keep the statist government going. It just doesn't end up here. It's very frustrating. There's Facebook pages like Ban Tim Walz from Minnesota Restaurants, all kinds of things like that where people are definitely showing their displeasure. But of course, you got Facebook hammering down on all of that. So it's hard to get together and do this stuff, as you know, because of all the suppression going on. But it's bubbling up through that. It's definitely bubbling up. The people in Minnesota want to be free, just like the people everywhere else want to be free.
Were there signs at the entrances saying masks recommended or requested? Because that's what I'm seeing a lot of places now, just retail around Arizona, northern Arizona at least. It's masks recommended or requested. If you're unvaccinated, it says sometimes, but the signs have changed from mandates to suggestions. So what was the signage at the fair? Exactly
that. Everywhere you go in the bathroom, you go around, it's all just like that. And even in like the Democrat booth and a couple of the news booths where they're pushing all this hysteria, and they aren't going to let any of it go because we got the hysteria going good. They are wearing masks, but they aren't requiring people in. And I did a little video, and I went in the Democrat booth, couldn't help myself, and recorded a young girl, and just talking to her, and ask her questions. And I said, well, geez, you're wearing a mask and I don't have to, I'll come. And she said, well, it's policy in here. I'm like, and she got a shirt that says vaccinated like 8 times. And I said, so are you vaccinated? She's like, yeah, and shows me her shirt. And I was talking to her for about 10 minutes. And then someone noticed I was recording her and came over and said, oh, no, here, we need to talk to you in the back, Peggy, and took her away. So that is a leftist mentality right there. No matter what, we're going to keep pushing this hysteria. And you know what? If someone's innocently talking to a member of the public, which she was, she didn't say anything bad. She didn't say anything contrary to her party or anything like that. We're still going to shut you down from talking.
Yeah. So there's an important lesson that I take from this, or point that I take from all of this, to update my understanding of where society is with COVID right now. And while a lot of what we discussed in the first half of the show today was sort of premised on the hysteria that was the start of COVID still being here, it's really faded a lot. This is an interesting question to ask, because what was the state fair last year? Canceled?
Oh yeah.
So
big time.
Not even like we're going to show up or do our own thing, just totally canceled. A year later into this now, and we're not going to wear masks walking around outside. They're going to ask us to, and we're going to laugh at them. That's a huge shift in public opinion. I would again appeal to the audience and my producers club, if anybody can look up some statistics that might show a decline in the hysteria over the last year and a half, but it seems like I don't know, down to what it was. Hard to say, right? How do you measure the hysteria?
To me, I bet if you look at the number of diehard Democrats and the number of vaccinated, you're going to be pretty close on, because I know some diehard Democrats up here because we're surrounded by them. And I even know an older lady who got criminally prosecuted for renting out a dock space so she could pay her taxes and stay living in her home. And we kind of came to her rescue and saved her off of that. But even she still thinks that the government's right. She's been persecuted. She's been through it. It was the worst thing that ever happened to her in her life, but she still can't let go of what the government's doing. And by the way, this is a lady who diehard lefty. When we went out for a boat ride last year, she came on the boat ride without a mask, 72, 73 years old. She's in a vulnerable category. So like I said, it goes back to that, what's good for thee is not good for me. And, everything's a hysteria, and we're going to tell you how to survive it, because you ain't smart enough to figure out how to wash your hands yourself.
Yeah, I think you misspoke. I'm sorry for trying to interrupt there, because you said the number of vaccinated is going to mirror diehard Democrats. And I think maybe you meant to say, or what it sounded like you would have meant to say, was the number of hardcore COVIDists, the number of people who really take COVID as the religion is going to mirror the number of, or be pretty close to, loyalist Democratic Party types. But having gotten vaccine is going to be a lot more than that. A lot of unthinking followers and a lot of obedient Republican types and a lot of people who are kind of bullied or just kind of convinced into it with their job or some other work situation where they're just like, yeah, I know the vaccine is bad, but it's probably not that bad, and I need this for work, so I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah, no, I got to completely agree with that. I've got to completely agree.
According to the official numbers, are vaccinated in the U.S. Batteries. All right, so with that, since we're 15 minutes in here, Jay, I have a news story from goodnewsnetwork.org on alternative energy. The headline is tens of millions now have power thanks to off-grid solar systems, many of them recycled. While in America, off-grid solar electricity is still fairly uncommon, around the world it gives power to 420 million people. That's more than the 330 million population of the US. Furthermore, it's created an entirely unlooked for market worth more than $1 billion annually. It's unlooked for because as the first and even second generation of solar panels are nearing the end of their life cycle, renewable energy pioneers and advocates are hurrying to try and come up with ways to prevent them from inundating landfills with millions of tons of electronic waste. Jay, can you speak to what this represents in the evolution towards renewable energies, where we're able to recycle, upcycle, send used gear to third world countries?
Sure. I'd be glad to. First of all, I know they recycle solar panels. There's a business here in New Hope, Minnesota, that recycles all kinds of different stuff, and they'll take in solar panels, I think 30 some cents a pound, something like that, and then they'll recycle it. So the recycling aspect's already here, at least partially. And I'm sure they're not completely recycling all the crystals and stuff, but they're getting what they can off the panels. That being said, the issue with sending second and third generation solar modules down to third world countries is, yes, I understand they're doing all this and it probably works because these people aren't powering air conditioners, water heaters, TVs, and all this other stuff in their life. They might have one small TV and power a few lights and maybe even a mini fridge if they have it. So they don't really need a lot of electricity. But these are also people who don't need consistent electricity. People in the United States do not understand how inconsistent electricity is in the third world. That's why they're third world, okay? Because they don't have the same access to this modern wonder we have called electrons flowing to you right now. So what happens in places like Africa, I may be going to Nigeria looking at potentially installing a 1 megawatt wind and solar project at a university and then other campuses on the university. And the reason they're doing this is because everybody runs off of generators because they can only get electricity on average for 10 to 15% of the day. Yeah. Okay. That's everybody in the country, except of course the president and all the important people, right? Only gets a minimal amount of electricity. So when you're bringing in these old used solar panels, it might seem like a boon where it's really helping people and it's helped move them forward, but it's very limited in its capability. Because once these solar panels have been out in the sun for 20 years, I don't care what they say, they're going to be degrading. And now you move them to a hot environment where solar panels work least or work worser. Okay, they do not work well. All solar panels are rated at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. The hotter it gets, the worse they work. The colder it gets, the better they work. So when you're moving them to third world countries, which are typically in warm climates because they can't afford heat or whatever, that they're going to be hot solar panels, okay, and they're going to degrade faster. So yeah, this might be a stopgap measure to help start getting some electricity to some places. But you know what I really see in all of this? I see all those solar panels moving from the landfills in the United States to third world landfills where there's no controls.
Come on, man, it's Good News Friday. Don't be so cynical. All right, so I got two follow-ups on this. First, the crux of their assertion in the story is this sentence: the solution to the problem of growing solar waste is perhaps seeing that a degraded solar panel just needs a slight fix to make it nearly as good as new. Is that oversimplifying or being too optimistic?
I would have to say so. I mean, after 20, 25 years, I don't care what kind of glass they have on there, it's going to be faded. The crystals. Okay, has anyone seen a vehicle that sits out in the sun in Florida after a couple of years?
Well, retreating the surface of the glass itself, that's like, what they're going to have a machine that buffs it perfectly. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's just part of it. The crystals themselves.
Significant, but it's like that's how you recycle solar panels, and they're just old, unless a generation old, but they're, I mean, as good as new. But you're saying so the crystals degrade as well, and of course rubber components all need to be replaced. You've got, so I mean, a solar panel, correct me if I'm wrong, is made up of metal framing, connecting parts, glass on top of crystals, and rubber to hold it together with electronic components that sends the unregulated charge off the device. But that's it, right? Pretty simple thing.
Simple to say,
right?
not simple to make it all.
Well, people understand too that the upcycling. So there are two challenges with an old solar panel that I see obvious as a just an enthusiast here going. Well, yeah, at some point glass degrades, becomes foggy, has to be reconditioned or replaced. Not a big deal. The rubber components and seal, like if there's caulking or glue, around edges, things like that, or holding components together like that, might have to be replaced. But the crystals themselves, and that's kind of the crux of this. How much do they degrade over 20 years in a solar panel, and is it possible to make it nearly good as new?
Well, you see, that's part of it. But you also have to consider is that these solar panels sitting on a roof somewhere, let's say it's cloudy 30% of the days, the other 70% of the days, especially in a warm climate, those things are going to be sitting up there baking like ovens at 140, 150 degrees.
Yeah.
Okay, so just the act of baking in the sunlight is going to degrade every single part of that module, whether it be the rubber, whether it be the electronics, whether, electronics overheat and then things short out and then you have issues. So, it's a little more complex than just saying, well, if we can clean the glass and touch this in that up, it's going to be just like new. You know what? I got a great comparison for you. Years ago, they used to sell retreads. Who out there, raise your hand, knows what a retread is? Okay. A retread used to be where they would take a tire, they'd knock the tread off the outside, and they'd put a whole new tread on it. Okay. And then they'd sell you the tire back as a retread at a discounted rate. The problem was, especially once vehicles started going faster, those things would just spin apart on you when you're on the road. They weren't safe. That's why you don't see retreads anymore.
The cost savings and the market corrected.
Right, absolutely. So it's the same thing with solar panels. To me, the way to do it is to actually recycle it. You pull all the aluminum frame off, you pull the crystals out, find a way to mash up the crystals so you can separate the aluminum or whatever inside connectors and the solar crystals themselves. Then how do you rehabilitate these crystals? And then you go and remanufacture a new panel with your recycled parts.
Okay, so yeah, sounds like you're more of a fan of that raw material recycling than the reconditioning upcycling. So my last relevant question to this is about the way that the technology tends to leapfrog in places where it's been suppressed or limited in certain ways. And I'll get to the example, but to your point about the manipulation towards things that are inefficient, there's a lot of that in solar. There's a lot of that throughout alternative energy because it's all government policy, it's all tax policy. And instead of people doing the right thing for the market to create value, create the best gear for the lowest price with the materials we have and the understanding that we can bring to this, it's well, if we put this in it and we make it with this metal, we pay less in taxes than if we do it with that. Or if we upcycle, we get a subsidy. If we recycle and melt it down, we don't, because that's the industrial, whatever. All these bullshit things driven by emotionally driven politics. But anyway, the example of leapfrogging in this case seems like there might be an opportunity for a parallel with off-grid energy, the same way there was for digital money in Africa. And it was because they got cell phones before they got reliable banking services. And what they ended up using was cell phone minutes, and it was widespread. I don't know how much this is relevant today because this is with I think with dumb phones. They were trading minutes as currency while national currencies were failing or unavailable. And this was actually more private. They didn't have access to banking services, digital transmission, but they could share minutes. They could trade minutes. You remember this, right? I mean, this is like 90s shit in the United States, right? You buy minutes on a phone plan, send it.
Carryover minute.
That's some old shit. But so I assume Africa's past this by and large, moved on to smartphones, but and we see crypto booming in certain ways. But I wonder then, is there a similar opportunity for perhaps, and I don't even know what it would be, maybe just more efficient solar? I mean, maybe at some point, solar is so cheap and efficient and portable that it's implemented in rural villages in Africa where there's a demand or there's a charity that puts the money and gets it out faster, and all of a sudden Africa's like solar is the norm there and America's behind.
If you really wanted to help Africa in that manner, what you'd be investing in is putting a group together that runs around Africa and installs solar and wind powered wells. So everybody's got fresh water. Okay. It's the basics. It's the important stuff. And you start building with that so that people don't have to worry about getting water every day. They can worry about building their community. They could worry about farming. They could worry about education or other things. Okay. So that's how you do it. Just like I said a few weeks ago, to me, if you really want to export help to third world countries, we'd be sending garbage incinerators to make electricity everywhere. They got a garbage problem. They don't have electricity. We solve two with one thing. So those are the types of ways, to me, to really help third world type countries start entering our age, is to give them the basics they need and then let them do it for themselves, because they're going to build their community the way they want to. Some communities may not want to have a lot of electricity. You know what? I hate to tell you, Facebook and Twitter, a lot of communities just ain't interested in you guys infiltrating and putting division in their community. They like to have their communities the way they are. So, like I said, we give them the basics and let them build up from there.
Yeah. Well said. Any final thoughts today, sir? Oh,
yeah,
by the way, Ed said in the comments, you want to know if you had any more turbines for sale.
Yes, I do. All you got to do is contact me. Go to my website, gogreenenergyonline.com. There it is. Contact me, and we can work on that. I'm actually working on a potential project in the Bahamas at 70 wind turbines at 70 houses they're building. They want to be a microgrid. We could be replacing 4 wind turbines on a skyscraper in San Francisco. Then I got that big project going on out in Africa. I do want to switch gears a little bit. And I know it is Good News Friday, but we do have some bad news from Minnesota, and it's completely 100% related to the war on drugs. This war that we can somehow supposedly win by moralistically judging others and telling them what they're doing is so wrong, we're going to jail you for it. And we had a friend of ours who's in jail right now because last night, over a little bit of pot, some gang members kind of went after him, and he had to defend himself and shot and killed one of them. I'm not too privy to what it's in the paper. I'm not too privy to the story, but here's my point. It's all about a little bit of pot. Okay. Pot was legal, and they could go in the liquor store where that pot was and buy a joint, or the liquor store right there, and buy a joint instead of a bottle. This issue wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay. People wouldn't be going to jail. Gangs would have less money, less power. The police departments would be smaller. All of this would be positive for everybody. And it's time for us really to reconsider the war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on COVID, all these wars we have that are unwinnable, inherent things, to me, meant to keep us, the masses, subjugated.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jay. Is there a way to help your friend? Or are we just going to be sharing that if some legal defense issue? It sounds like
I'll have something for you by Monday or Tuesday. How's that? I'm going to talk to my son Kaler. He's really good friends with him. The guy's worked with me before, he's a great kind of gentle giant guy, you know. And so, yeah, I would love to be able to help, because I know he's going to need help in this situation. And so I'll talk to Kaler, and we'll get a message off to you with some, maybe we will get a GoFundMe account or something going for him.
Hopefully there's nothing to hear, and the legal system is able to vindicate him relatively quickly, but that's not usually the case.
Nope, not at all. All right, folks, get to my YouTube channel, Turbine Guy, right? Sign up. I need more subs. Watch. I got my marijuana drop-off station videos there. You can watch and have a good time. And it was really fun at the Libertarian Booth, because there were actually people who did not know what libertarians were, but were end up taking our little test, signing up and understanding they are now. They really were libertarians, and they want to be part of the group.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for joining us today, Jay.
See y'all.